He was a former Navy SEAL, a man who chose silence over glory, living alone on a remote stretch of land in Iron Ridge, Colorado, a place forgotten by most, until powerful people decided it was worth taking. On a merciless winter morning, he was found bound in the snow beside his two loyal German shepherds, Titan and Shadow, left there not to die quietly, but to send a message. His story should have ended in that frozen silence. It didn't, because one young journalist walked into the storm, saw what others would have feared, and refused to turn away. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, please subscribe. The storm had been building for hours. High in the Colorado backcountry, wind carved through the mountains like a living thing, restless, relentless, unforgiving. Snow fell thick and heavy, swallowing sound, erasing tracks, turning the world into something distant and unreal. Inside a small wooden cabin perched against the slope, Ethan Cole sat alone. Ethan Cole was a man who looked like he had once belonged to motion, not stillness. At 42, he stood tall at just over 6 feet, with a broad, athletic frame that had not yet forgotten its strength. His dark brown hair was cut short, practical, streaked faintly with gray at the temples. A thin scar ran along his left jawline, pale against weathered skin, a quiet reminder of a life he no longer spoke about. His eyes, steel gray, were sharp, observant, but distant, as if always measuring something beyond the present moment. Years ago, Ethan had been a search and rescue helicopter pilot, the kind of man who flew into storms instead of away from them. That ended the night his aircraft went down during a blizzard rescue mission. He survived. His crew did not. Since then, silence had become his refuge. The cabin reflected that choice. Sparse, functional. No photographs, no unnecessary objects. Just a wood stove, a table, a chair, and the routines that filled his days. Chopping wood, repairing tools, maintaining the fragile line between survival and isolation. That night, he sat near the stove, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands, listening to the wind press against the walls. Then he heard it. A faint sound. Not the wind, something softer, irregular. Ethan didn't move at first. His body reacted before his mind did. Shoulders tightening slightly, breath slowing, senses sharpening. Old instincts didn't fade. They just waited. The sound came again. A scratch. Then another. 3 short, uneven scrapes against the wood of his door. And then, nothing. Silence returned, heavier than before. Ethan set the mug down slowly. He stood, his movements controlled, deliberate. Each step toward the door placed with quiet precision, as if the storm outside could hear him. He stopped just short of the handle, listened. Nothing. His hand rested on the cold metal. For a brief second, something unfamiliar passed through him. Not fear, but hesitation. It had been years since anyone or anything had come looking for him. Then he opened the door. The wind rushed in immediately, sharp and biting, carrying with it the scent of pine and snow. And then he saw her. A German shepherd stood on the porch. She was large, lean, and powerful despite the storm. Her coat, black and tan, was thick but matted with snow and ice. Her body trembled, but her stance remained steady, grounded. Her ears were alert, her gaze fixed directly on Ethan with an intensity that felt almost human. This was not a stray. This was a working dog. Even in the chaos of the storm, there was discipline in the way she held herself. Purpose. Ethan's eyes dropped. And then he saw what she carried. A bundle, wrapped in a thin, worn blanket, clutched carefully in her mouth. A sound escaped it. Small, fragile. A cry. Ethan froze. For a moment, his mind rejected what his eyes were telling him. Nothing about this made sense. Dogs did not bring children to doors. Not in storms like this, not in the middle of nowhere. And yet, the cry came again, weak, fading. Behind the mother dog, pressed close to her hind leg, stood a puppy. He was small, barely a few months old, his fur lighter, softer. His body shook uncontrollably, not just from the cold, but from uncertainty. His eyes darted between Ethan and the mother, searching, learning, afraid, but trusting. Ethan exhaled slowly. The world narrowed. Training took over. He stepped aside. "Inside," he said quietly. The dog did not hesitate. She moved forward with controlled urgency, placing the bundle gently on the wooden floor just inside the cabin before stepping back. Not retreating, positioning. Between Ethan and the puppy. Protective, not aggressive. Watching. Always watching. Ethan dropped to one knee. Carefully, he reached for the bundle. Inside was a newborn. The baby's skin was pale, tinged blue at the lips and fingertips. Eyes closed, breathing shallow and uneven. Too cold. Far too cold. Something tightened in Ethan's chest. Not panic, recognition. He had seen this before. On mountains, in wreckage, in places where survival depended on seconds. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, controlled. "All right, stay with me." He moved quickly. The door shut behind him, sealing out the storm. He stripped off his jacket, wrapping it around the baby, creating warmth where there was none. He adjusted the fire, feeding it dry wood until the flames grew stronger, brighter. Behind him, the mother dog moved. Not closer, not farther. She positioned herself near the door, body angled outward, as if guarding the cabin itself. The puppy curled against her side, pressing into her warmth. Ethan noticed everything. The way her ears flicked toward the outside. The way her eyes tracked his movements. The way she did not interfere. Trust. Heavy. Unspoken. Absolute. He worked fast. Blankets, heat, improvised care. Every action precise, every second measured. Minutes passed. Then something changed. The baby's breathing steadied, slightly. Color returned, faint but visible. Ethan let out a slow breath. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it. He sat back slightly, still holding the child. And for the first time, he looked at the dog again. Really looked. There was no fear in her eyes, no confusion, only focus, expectation. As if she had completed one part of a task and was waiting for him to complete the rest. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the cabin, something had shifted. Something irreversible. Ethan looked down at the baby in his arms, then back at the dog. And in that moment, he understood something he couldn't explain. This wasn't chance. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. And somehow, he had been chosen. The rope didn't give easily. Claire's hands were already numb, her fingers stiff from the cold as she pressed the blade harder against the frozen fibers. Each movement was slow, deliberate, controlled by necessity rather than skill. The wind howled through the clearing, dragging snow sideways across the ground, stinging her face like needles. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Logan Hayes was still barely breathing, his head tilted forward, body locked in place by the tension of the ropes. Up close, he looked even more imposing. Broad shoulders straining against the bindings, jaw set even in unconsciousness, as if some part of him refused to surrender completely. "Stay with me," Claire muttered under her breath, though she had no idea if he could hear her. The blade finally cut through one of the main bindings around his arms, the rope snapping loose with a stiff crack. Logan's body shifted slightly, the sudden release allowing his shoulders to drop a fraction. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Claire moved quickly to the next section, sawing through another loop. Her breathing grew heavier, visible in sharp bursts of white. She could feel panic trying to creep in, but she forced it down. Panic wasted time. Time was something they didn't have. She turned to the dogs next. Titan was closest, his massive frame partially buried under fresh snow. Up close, his size was even more striking. Thick neck, powerful chest, a working dog built for endurance and protection. His fur was cold but not frozen solid, a small relief. Claire cut through the ropes binding his legs, whispering softly as she worked. "You're okay. You're okay." The dog didn't respond, but his breathing deepened slightly as circulation returned. Shadow was next, lighter, more agile in build even in stillness. His ears twitched faintly as Claire loosened the restraints, a small sign that he was closer to waking. That gave her a flicker of hope. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a sound that made Claire freeze. Not close, but not far either. A branch snapping somewhere deeper in the forest. Her head turned instinctively, eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing. Just movement of snow and shadow. Still, the feeling settled into her chest. Tight, heavy, undeniable. They weren't safe here. She looked back at Logan, then at the forest, then at the road she could no longer see. "Think, Claire," she whispered. That was when she remembered the cabin. She had passed it nearly half a mile back, barely noticing it at the time. Just another abandoned structure swallowed by winter. But it had walls, a roof, shelter. It was their only chance. Getting one person there would have been difficult. Getting three. Claire exhaled slowly. "We're doing this," she said, more to herself than anyone else. She dragged her bag closer and rummaged through it quickly. A tarp, not large but enough. A coil of thin rope. Her gloves were soaked through, but she pulled them tighter anyway. Working fast, she spread the tarp beside Logan, rolling him carefully onto it. He was heavy, far heavier than she expected. Every inch of him felt solid, unyielding, like moving a piece of machinery instead of a person. "Sorry," she muttered as his body shifted awkwardly. She secured the tarp around him as best she could, tying makeshift handles with the rope. Then she tested the weight. It barely moved. Claire swallowed. Okay. She adjusted her stance, leaned back, and pulled. The tarp slid an inch, then another. Snow helped, reducing friction just enough. It was possible. Barely. She started moving. Each step was a struggle. Her boots dug into the snow as she pulled, muscles straining, breath coming faster and harder. The wind pushed against her, slowing her progress further. After 10 yards, she had to stop, doubling over as her lungs burned. "You picked a great day for this," she said between breaths, a hollow attempt at humor. Logan didn't respond. Neither did the storm. She went back for the dogs next, dragging Titan first. Even unconscious, he felt like dead weight, his body resisting every attempt to move him. Shadow was slightly easier, but not by much. It took time. Too much time. The storm intensified, visibility dropping further. The world narrowed to a few feet in front of her. More than once, Claire lost her direction, forced to stop and reorient herself based on faint landmarks she barely remembered. A fallen tree, a cluster of rocks, a break in the trees. "Come on," she whispered, over and over, as if saying it enough times would make it easier. Halfway to the cabin, her legs nearly gave out. She collapsed to one knee, hands sinking into the snow. For a moment, she just stayed there, head lowered, breath ragged. Then something surfaced in her mind. Flames. Not cold, heat. Smoke choking the sky. The wildfire from 2 years ago. Bitterroot Ridge. She had been there as a junior reporter, barely trusted with anything important. The fire had spread too fast, too clean. Officials had called it natural. Most people believed it. Claire hadn't. She remembered standing at the edge of the burned forest, watching blackened trees collapse into ash. She remembered a man standing beside her. Tall, broad, too calm. He had introduced himself briefly, didn't offer a name at first. Just a warning. "Some stories aren't worth finishing," he had said. His voice had been smooth, controlled, almost polite. Later, she learned his name. Victor Kane. The same name now circled in her notebook. The same pattern. Land cleared. Ownership changed. Development followed. Her jaw tightened. "Not this time," she whispered. That memory pushed her back to her feet. She grabbed the rope again and pulled, step by step, inch by inch. The cabin appeared through the storm like a ghost, dark, half buried, barely standing. Relief hit her so hard it almost knocked her off balance. "There you are." The door was warped, frozen at the hinges. She shoved it with her shoulder, once, twice, until it gave with a loud crack. Inside, the air was just as cold, but still, protected from the wind. That was enough. She dragged Logan in first, positioning him near the center of the room. Then the dogs, one at a time, laying them close together. Her arms trembled uncontrollably now, exhaustion catching up all at once. She pushed the door closed and wedged a broken plank against it as a makeshift brace. Then she slid down against the wall, her body finally giving in. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at the 3 figures on the floor. A stranger, 2 dogs, all alive. Barely. The storm roared outside, but inside the cabin, a fragile stillness settled. Claire's breathing slowly steadied. Her hands still shook, but less now. She wiped snow from her face and looked at Logan again. "You better be worth this," she said quietly. But deep down, she already knew. This wasn't just about him. This was about something bigger. Something she had been chasing for months without realizing how close she had come. And now, there was no turning back. Pain came first. Not sharp, not immediate, but deep and spreading, like something buried under layers of ice finally cracking its way back to the surface. Logan Hayes didn't move at first. His breathing remained slow, controlled, almost imperceptible. Years of training had conditioned him to wake like this, aware before alert, calculating before reacting. The cold was different now. Not the biting, open-air brutality of the storm, but a contained chill, still dangerous, but manageable. Shelter. That meant variables had changed. That meant someone had intervened. His eyes opened slightly, just enough to take in blurred shapes. Wooden beams above, a warped ceiling. Dim gray light leaking through a frost-covered window. A cabin. His body shifted subtly, testing limits. No ropes. Circulation returning. Muscles stiff but responsive. He registered everything in fragments. Position, exits, angles, before his gaze settled on movement across the room. Claire Bennett stood near the wall, her back half turned, adjusting something in her bag. She hadn't noticed him yet. Up close, exhaustion showed more clearly now. Her posture was slightly hunched, shoulders tight from strain, movements slower than before. Snow had melted into her coat and refrozen in patches. Strands of her chestnut hair clung damply to her face. But her eyes, when she turned, were still sharp, alert. She froze the moment she realized he was awake. For a second, neither of them spoke. Logan pushed himself up, slow but controlled, bracing one hand against the floor. The movement alone revealed his strength. Despite injury, despite exhaustion. He didn't rush. He didn't show weakness. "You're awake," Claire said finally, her voice steady though quieter than before. Logan studied her without answering immediately. His gaze moved over her, hands raw and reddened from the cold, slight tremor in her fingers. The camera resting nearby, scratched but functional. Not local, not prepared. But she hadn't run. That mattered. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice low, rough, but controlled. "Cabin. About half a mile from where I found you," Claire replied. "Found you" hung in the air for a moment. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly. He shifted to sit fully upright, ignoring the pull in his shoulders. His attention snapped to the side as Titan let out a faint breath. Logan moved instantly, crossing the short distance in 2 controlled steps and dropping beside the dog. His hand pressed gently against Titan's neck, checking. Alive. Warm enough. Shadow stirred slightly nearby, ears twitching, reacting even in weakness. Relief flickered across Logan's face for less than a second before it hardened again into focus. "They didn't kill us," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Claire hesitated. "What?" Logan looked up at her now, his expression sharper. "If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead." His voice carried certainty, not speculation. This was intentional. Claire swallowed. "A warning?" Logan nodded once. "A message." Silence stretched between them again, heavier this time. Claire stepped closer, arms folded instinctively against the cold. "Who?" she asked. Logan didn't answer immediately. He stood slowly, his full height filling the small cabin, presence shifting the space around him. "Victor Kane," he said finally. The name landed hard. Claire's reaction was subtle, but Logan caught it. A tightening in her jaw, a flicker in her eyes. Recognition. "You know him," Logan said, not a question. Claire exhaled slowly. "I've heard of him." Logan didn't buy it. His gaze held steady, unreadable. Claire hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "That's not entirely true." She moved toward the small table, setting her bag down, buying herself a second to think. "I've been tracking him," she admitted. Logan's posture shifted again. more alert now. Why? Claire looked up at him. Because things don't add up. She gestured vaguely, as if trying to pull scattered pieces together. Land acquisitions, small towns, places like this. Properties changing hands under pressure. Sometimes accidents, fires. People just disappearing from the equation. Logan's eyes darkened. And you came here alone? Claire gave a short, humorless breath. Freelance journalist. Not exactly a team sport. Logan didn't respond, but something in his expression tightened. Disapproval, maybe. Or recognition. Claire continued, quieter now. 2 years ago, I was covering a wildfire. Bitterroot Ridge. It spread too clean, too fast. Officials said it was natural. She paused. It wasn't. Logan watched her closely. You sure? Claire nodded. I was there before and after. I saw the pattern. I saw how the land changed hands after. Same names, same shell companies. Her voice lowered further. And I met him. Logan's focus sharpened. Kane? Claire nodded again. He didn't introduce himself right away, just showed up, like he knew I was asking questions. She looked down briefly, then back up. He warned me, told me to stop digging. Logan crossed his arms slightly, absorbing that. And you didn't. Claire met his gaze directly. No. That earned the smallest shift in Logan's expression. Not approval, not exactly, but something close to it. Then you're already in it, he said. Claire frowned. In what? Logan stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. This isn't about land deals anymore. He gestured toward the storm outside, toward the forest beyond the walls. Men don't get tied up and left to freeze for business negotiations. Claire's chest tightened. Then what is it? Logan held her gaze for a long moment. Control, he said simply. And whatever they're building out there, they don't want anyone interfering. Claire glanced toward the window, unease settling deeper now. You think they'll come back? Logan didn't hesitate. Yes. The certainty in his voice was immediate, absolute. When? Claire asked. Logan looked toward the door, then back at her. Soon. Titan shifted again, letting out a low, strained sound. Logan crouched beside him, hand steadying the dog. Easy, he murmured. Shadow lifted his head slightly this time, eyes barely open but aware. Claire watched the interaction, something softening briefly in her expression. They're strong, she said. Logan nodded once. They don't quit. He glanced up at her again. Neither should you. Claire let out a quiet breath. Too late for that. Another silence followed, but this one felt different, less uncertain, more aligned. Logan stood again, slower this time, conserving energy. You saved our lives, he said. Claire blinked, caught slightly off guard by the directness. I just didn't leave. Logan shook his head slightly. That's the difference. He paused, then added, and now you're a problem for them. Claire absorbed that without flinching. Good, she said quietly. Logan studied her for a second longer, then gave a small nod. Not agreement, not yet, but acknowledgement. Then we move carefully, he said, and we don't trust anything outside these walls. Claire nodded. What's the plan? Logan's gaze shifted toward the forest again, calculating, measuring. We figure out what they're hiding, he said. before they erase it. Outside, the storm pressed harder against the cabin, wind rattling the old structure. Inside, something else had taken shape. Not trust, not yet, but an alliance. Fragile, necessary, and dangerous. The storm hadn't passed. It had only changed shape. By the time the light outside shifted from dull gray to a darker, heavier tone, the wind had calmed just enough to create the illusion of safety. Inside the cabin, the silence pressed in, broken only by the faint breathing of the two dogs and the occasional creak of old wood adjusting to the cold. Logan stood near the window, his broad frame still, eyes narrowed as he studied the tree line through a thin veil of frost. His body was recovering, but not fully. Every movement carried weight, every breath measured. Still, there was no hesitation in him. Not anymore. Claire sat on the floor nearby, her back against the wall, camera resting in her hands. She had wiped the lens clean, checked the battery twice, and was now scrolling through what little footage she had captured before the storm swallowed everything. It wasn't much, but it was enough to confirm one thing. She hadn't imagined any of this. Titan moved first. It was subtle, a shift in posture, a low sound in his chest that didn't belong to pain. Logan noticed immediately. He turned, crossing the space in 2 steps and crouching beside the dog. Titan's head lifted slowly, muscles trembling with effort. But his eyes were clear now, focused, alert. Shadow followed seconds later, pushing himself up onto unsteady legs, his body angled toward the far side of the cabin. "They're sensing something," Logan said quietly. Claire looked up. "What kind of something?" Logan didn't answer right away. He watched the dogs instead. Titan sniffed the air once, twice, then turned his head toward the rear wall of the cabin. Not the door, not the path they came from. The other direction, deeper into the forest. Shadow let out a low growl, not aggressive, but warning. Recognition. Logan's expression hardened. "Not danger," he said. "Familiar." Claire frowned, pushing herself to her feet. "Familiar to them?" Logan nodded once, which means it matters. He stood, testing his weight, then reached for his jacket. The movement was deliberate, efficient. Decision already made. Claire watched him. "You're going out there?" Logan looked at her like the answer was obvious. "If there's something in that direction, we find it before someone else does." Claire hesitated. The rational part of her mind pushed back immediately. Stay inside, stay safe, wait it out. But the rest of her, the part that had driven her here in the first place, didn't allow it. She grabbed her camera, slinging it over her shoulder. "Then I'm coming with you." Logan didn't argue. That, more than anything, told her how serious this was. They moved quickly, layering what little protection they had. Logan checked the dogs again, steadying Titan briefly before stepping toward the door. He paused only long enough to listen. The wind had dropped further, leaving behind an unnatural stillness. "Stay close," he said. "And don't make noise unless you have to." Claire nodded. The door opened with a low groan, and the cold rushed in again, sharp, immediate, unforgiving. They stepped out into a world that felt smaller than before. The storm had erased most of their tracks, flattening the landscape into something almost unrecognizable. But the dogs didn't hesitate. Titan moved first, slower than usual but purposeful, his nose low to the ground. Shadow followed closely, occasionally lifting his head, scanning ahead. Logan fell into step behind them, his posture shifting instinctively into something more tactical, controlled, alert, every sense engaged. Claire followed, camera already in her hands, recording everything. The forest felt different now, quieter, not empty, but watchful. They didn't go far. Less than a quarter mile before Titan stopped abruptly near a cluster of dense fir trees. The snow there looked wrong. Claire saw it immediately through the lens. Too thin in one spot, uneven in a way that didn't match the rest of the ground. "Hold on," she whispered, zooming in. Logan moved closer, crouching beside the area. He brushed away a layer of snow with his gloved hand, revealing something beneath. Wood. Not old, not natural. A constructed surface, partially buried. Claire's pulse quickened. "That's not supposed to be there," she said. Logan didn't respond. He cleared more snow, exposing the edges of what looked like a hatch. Reinforced. Deliberately hidden. Shadow let out another low growl, stepping back slightly. Titan remained still, watching. Logan tested the edge of the hatch, fingers tracing along the seam. "New," he said. "Too new." Claire adjusted her angle, capturing everything. "Open it?" she asked. Logan hesitated for half a second, then nodded. He shifted his grip and pulled. The hatch resisted at first, frozen slightly in place, then gave with a dull crack. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying a scent that didn't belong in the forest. Chemical. Sharp. Claire wrinkled her nose. "What is that?" Logan leaned closer, eyes narrowing as he peered inside. "Not something you store legally," he said. The space beneath was narrow, but deep enough to hold several crates, all stacked neatly, covered with tarps. Claire dropped to one knee, angling her camera downward. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what they're hiding." Logan reached in carefully, pulling back part of a tarp. The crate beneath was sealed, markings scraped off but not completely erased. Enough remained to suggest something industrial, something controlled. "Explosives," he said quietly. Claire's breath caught. "You're sure?" Logan didn't look at her. "I've seen enough of them." He moved to another crate, opening it just enough to confirm. Same contents. Same intent. Claire's hands tightened around the camera. "This isn't just land development," she said. "This is—" She stopped. A sound cut through the air, faint, mechanical. Both of them froze. Logan's head snapped upward, eyes scanning the sky through the trees. Claire followed his gaze. At first, she saw nothing. Then, movement. Small. Fast. A flicker between branches. "Drone," Logan said under his breath. Claire's stomach dropped. The device hovered just beyond clear sight, its faint hum blending with the wind. Watching. Recording. "They know we're here," she whispered. Logan didn't respond immediately. His focus had shifted entirely now, calculating distance, angles, time. "We're not alone," he said. Claire's camera was still running, capturing everything. But now, she noticed something else. Footprints. Not theirs. Not old. Fresh enough to remain partially visible despite the storm. Leading toward the hatch. And away from it. Her voice lowered. "They've been here recently." Logan's jaw tightened, which means they're still close. The drone shifted slightly, adjusting position, tracking them. Claire felt the weight of it settle in her chest, the realization that this had escalated far beyond investigation. This was surveillance. Control. "What do we do?" she asked. Logan closed the hatch in one swift motion, covering it again with snow as best he could. "We leave," he said. "Now." His tone left no room for debate. Titan turned immediately, as if understanding. Shadow followed, tension visible in every movement. Claire took one last glance through her camera, ensuring she had enough footage. Enough proof. Then she backed away, heart pounding. As they moved, the forest no longer felt quiet. It felt occupied. Every shadow deeper, every sound sharper. And somewhere above them, unseen but present, something watched their every step. They didn't speak until the trees grew thicker again and the sound of the drone faded into the distance, swallowed by the forest and wind. Even then, Logan didn't slow. His pace remained steady, controlled. Each step placed with intention as he led Claire and the dogs along a route that curved away from the obvious path. Titan and Shadow moved with renewed urgency despite their injuries, their bodies low, senses sharp, occasionally glancing back as if aware they were no longer just tracking, but being tracked. Claire followed close behind, breath tight, camera still clutched in her hands, her mind racing faster than her body could keep up. The images she had captured replayed in fragments, crates, markings, that smell, the hatch. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was real. And it was bigger than she had imagined. They reached the cabin again without incident, but the silence around it felt different now. No longer empty, but exposed. Logan closed the door behind them quickly, reinforcing it again with the same broken beam. He didn't waste time. "Show me what you got," he said, his voice low but direct. Claire nodded, already moving to the small table, setting her camera down and powering it on. Her fingers still trembled slightly, but now it wasn't from cold. It was adrenaline. She scrolled through the footage, stopping at keyframes. "Here," she said, angling the screen toward him. Logan leaned in, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the dim light. The video flickered, grainy, unstable in places, but clear enough. The hatch, the crates, the partial markings. He watched without interrupting, his expression tightening with each second. "Pause it," he said. Claire froze the frame. Logan pointed at the corner of one crate. "Zoom in." She adjusted the focus. The image sharpened just enough to reveal a fragment of text, partially scratched away, but not completely. Logan exhaled slowly. "That's military-grade labeling," he said. Claire blinked. "You're sure?" Logan nodded. "Not standard civilian material. Not even close." Claire leaned back slightly, processing. "So Kane isn't just buying land," she said. "He's stockpiling weapons." Logan didn't answer immediately. He straightened, pacing once across the cabin, then back again. "Not just weapons," he said finally. "Infrastructure." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" Logan stopped, facing her. "Maps, layouts, placement. That's not random storage. That's staging." Claire felt the weight of that settle in. "Staging for what?" Logan's jaw tightened. "Something long-term." The words hung in the air. Claire turned back to the camera, scrolling further. More footage, more angles. Then something new. She paused again. "Wait." Logan stepped closer. "What?" Claire zoomed in on another crate, this one partially open in the footage. Inside, rolled documents. Blueprints. She pulled up the clearest frame. Lines, structures, roads. "That's a development plan," she said. Logan studied it.
Not just a resort, he added. Look at the scale. Claire's eyes widened slightly.
This covers multiple zones. She flipped through more images, piecing it together. Access roads, utilities, private sections. This isn't a single project. Logan nodded. It's a network. The realization hit both of them at the same time. Claire leaned back slowly, running a hand through her hair. He's not just taking your land, she said. He's taking everything around it. Logan didn't deny it, and removing anything that gets in the way. Claire swallowed. That part she understood too well. She moved to her bag, pulling out her notebook, flipping through pages filled with names and dates. I've seen this pattern before, she said. Logan watched her closely. Where? Claire turned a few pages, stopping on a section marked with multiple notes. Bitterroot Ridge, she said quietly. The fire. Logan's eyes narrowed. You said it wasn't natural. Claire nodded. It wasn't. She pointed to a series of entries. The land burned, then within months, ownership shifted. Quietly. Through shell companies. She flipped another page. Then development proposals appeared, luxury cabins, private access. Logan crossed his arms slightly. And Kane? Claire tapped a name. Indirect, but consistent. She looked up at him. Every time something like this happens, his name shows up somewhere in the chain. Not always directly, but always close. Logan's expression darkened. So the fire cleared the land. Claire nodded. And whoever didn't sell lost everything anyway. Silence followed, heavy. Claire hesitated, then added, I tried to push the story back then. Logan's gaze shifted. What happened? Claire gave a small, humorless smile. No proof. She closed the notebook slowly. Just patterns. And a warning. Logan didn't need her to explain further. He understood. Claire looked back at the footage, then at him. But this, she said, gesturing to the camera. This is different. Logan nodded once. This is evidence. Claire's grip tightened slightly on the edge of the table. Enough to take him down? Logan didn't answer immediately. He moved to the window again, scanning the forest, then back to her. Enough to make him react. Claire's stomach dropped slightly. That's not reassuring. Logan met her gaze. It's honest. Titan shifted again on the floor, stronger now, lifting his head fully. Shadow followed, both dogs more alert than before. Their presence grounded the room, a reminder that survival was still the priority. Claire took a breath, steadying herself. Then we move fast, she said. Logan nodded. And we don't assume we have time. Claire looked back at the camera one more time, replaying the footage in her mind. The hatch, the crates, the maps, the scale of it all. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was exposure. And exposure had consequences. She closed the camera carefully, as if handling something fragile. I'm not walking away from this, she said quietly. Logan didn't question it. He had already made the same decision. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying with it the first signs of another shift in the storm. Inside the cabin, the truth had taken shape, clearer, heavier, and far more dangerous than either of them had expected. The storm returned like it had been waiting for them. By late afternoon, the wind no longer whispered. It roared, tearing through the trees in violent bursts that bent branches and erased the world beyond a few yards. Snow drove sideways, thick and blinding, swallowing tracks, sound, and distance. Inside the cabin, the temperature dropped again, the walls groaning under pressure. Logan didn't sit. He hadn't since they returned. He moved in short, controlled paths, window to door, door to corner, corner to dogs, mapping the space, rehearsing outcomes. Claire stood at the table, rechecking her camera and a second device she'd pulled from her bag. A compact audio recorder, matte black, worn at the edges. It belonged to Evan Cross, a colleague from Denver, 32, tall and wiry, with sandy hair and perpetually tired eyes. Evan was the kind of journalist who preferred data to danger, the one who had first flagged the shell companies in Claire's notes. He had a habit of double recording interviews in case something gets lost, and he'd pressed the spare recorder into Claire's hand before she left. "If anything goes sideways, get sound," he'd told her. "Sound sticks." She clicked it on now, tucking it into an inner pocket where the mic would still catch everything. Titan lifted his head sharply. Shadow followed, both dogs going still in a way that silenced the room more effectively than the storm. Logan froze mid-step. "They're here," he said quietly. Claire's pulse spiked. "How close?" Logan didn't look at her. "Close enough to hear if you breathe wrong." A crack split the air outside, too sharp for wind, too precise for chance. Gunfire. The round punched through the outer wall, splintering wood inches above the window frame. Claire flinched, instinctively ducking. Logan moved in the same instant, grabbing her arm and pulling her down behind the thicker support beam. "Stay low," he said, voice level, unshaken. Another shot followed, this one lower, chewing into the door. The pattern wasn't random. It was probing, testing. "They're trying to flush us," Logan said. Titan growled, deep and controlled. Shadow's ears flattened, his body angled between Claire and the door. Logan's gaze tracked the wall lines, counting impacts, mapping angles. 3, maybe 4, he muttered. Spread out. He moved to a small crate in the corner, something Claire hadn't noticed before, prying it open with a quick, practiced motion. Inside were tools, not weapons. A hatchet, a coil of wire, a handful of rusted nails, and a length of fishing line. "This place used to be a hunter's cache," he said, grabbing what he needed. "We make it work." Claire swallowed. "You're building traps?" Logan didn't answer, already moving. He looped the fishing line low across the doorway's interior angle, anchoring it to a nail driven into the beam, then scattered loose nails just beyond it, hidden under a thin layer of snow he pulled in with his boot. "Buy time," he said. "That's all." The next shot hit closer, shattering a pane of the already frosted window. Glass fragments sprayed inward. Claire flinched again, then forced herself steady. Her camera was already in her hands. She lifted it, recording, the red light blinking faintly. "What are you doing?" Logan asked without turning. "My job," she said. He didn't argue. He moved to the back wall, pressing his ear briefly to the wood, then stepped away. "They'll circle," he said. "Storm gives them cover." Titan rose, shaky but determined, moving to Logan's side. Shadow stayed with Claire, body tense, ready. Logan crouched beside Titan, hand steady on his neck. "Stay with her," he said quietly. Titan huffed once, as if acknowledging, then turned his head toward Claire. The next moment came fast. A shape moved past the broken window, dark against white. Logan pivoted, grabbing the hatchet and hurling it low. A shout followed, cut short, the figure stumbling out of sight. Move! Logan snapped. He pulled Claire toward the rear corner. We don't hold here. Another shot tore through the wall. Wood splintered, dust filling the air. Claire kept filming, breath tight, lens tracking everything. Impacts, movement, Logan's positioning. The audio recorder captured it all. Wind, gunfire, voices outside, faint, distorted, but present. A man's voice cut through the storm briefly. Inside! 2 of them! Another voice responded, harsher, older. Take the back. Logan's eyes narrowed. They're splitting, he said. Good. Claire blinked. Good? Logan gave a tight, humorless smile. Easier to break. He moved toward the rear wall, testing a loose panel. It shifted. There's a crawl space, he said. Old storage. Leads out behind the cabin. Claire's heart pounded. You knew that? I didn't, he said. But places like this usually have one. Titan moved first, squeezing through the opening with effort. Shadow followed, then turned back, waiting for Claire. Logan gestured. Go. Claire hesitated only a second, then ducked into the narrow space, camera still rolling. The air inside was colder, tighter, but it led somewhere. She crawled forward, boots scraping against packed earth and wood. Behind her, Logan pulled the panel back into place, just as another figure burst through the door. The trap snapped tight, line catching at shin height, nails biting through fabric and skin. A shout erupted, followed by a crash. Logan moved instantly, using the moment. He slid into the crawl space, sealing it behind him. Move, he said, voice low but urgent. They pushed forward, the space opening gradually, until it spilled out behind the cabin into a narrow trench formed by drifted snow and rock. The storm hit them full force again, but now they had distance. This way, Logan said, taking the lead. He didn't run blindly. He moved with purpose, angling through terrain that broke sight lines, low ridges, dense clusters of trees, natural cover. Titan kept pace beside him, slower but steady. Shadow stayed close to Claire, occasionally glancing back. Behind them, muffled shouts carried through the wind. The men had regrouped. They were following. Claire's arms burned from holding the camera, but she didn't lower it. Every second mattered. Every frame. She captured Logan moving through the storm like he belonged to it, controlled, precise, using the environment instead of fighting it. She caught glimpses of their pursuers, dark shapes between trees, flashes of movement. One man slipping on a hidden drop, another firing blindly into the white. One of them broke closer than the others. A younger man, mid-20s, lean, face partially covered but eyes wide with tension. He moved fast, too fast, closing distance recklessly. Logan saw it coming. He shifted direction slightly, leading the man toward a narrow slope where the snow thinned over rock. At the last second, Logan stepped aside. The man didn't. His footing vanished. He went down hard, weapons skidding away. Logan was on him in a heartbeat, knee pinning his shoulder, hand locking his wrist. Don't, Logan said, voice low and lethal. The man froze. Claire was there seconds later, camera capturing everything. His face, his fear, the weapon in the snow, the storm swirling around them. Who sent you? Logan asked. The man hesitated, then shook his head. I don't. Logan tightened his grip slightly. Wrong answer. The man's resolve cracked fast. Kane, he said. We were told to retrieve the evidence, nothing else. Claire's breath hitched. She zoomed in, capturing every word. Proof. Not speculation. Not theory. Proof. Logan held the man's gaze for a moment longer, then released him with a shove. Go, he said. The man didn't wait. He scrambled to his feet and disappeared into the storm. Logan stood, scanning the trees once more. The others had fallen back. For now. Claire lowered the camera slightly, her hands shaking. Not from cold this time. We got it, she said quietly. Logan nodded once. Now we survived long enough to use it. The storm howled louder, but for the first time since it began, they weren't just running. They were fighting back. They didn't stop moving until the storm began to thin into something survivable. By the time the tree line broke and the faint outline of Iron Ridge reappeared through drifting snow, Claire's legs felt like they didn't belong to her anymore. Every step was mechanical, driven by will alone. Logan stayed ahead, scanning constantly, his pace slowing only enough to keep them together. Titan and Shadow followed, both exhausted but alert, refusing to fall behind. The town looked different now, not peaceful, but distant, almost unreal after what they had just come through. A single light burned at the edge of the main road. Logan angled toward it without hesitation. Sheriff's substation, he said. Claire nodded, clutching her camera tighter. Let's hope they're not already compromised. Logan didn't answer. He didn't deal in hope. The building was small, practical, steel siding, reinforced door, a single vehicle parked outside half buried in snow. Logan approached cautiously, eyes tracking windows, angles, shadows. No movement. He knocked once. Then again, louder. A moment passed. Then the door opened. The man standing there was in his early 40s, stocky, with a weathered face and a short beard peppered with gray. His name tag read Deputy Aaron Cole. He had the look of someone who had seen enough small-town trouble to be skeptical of anything bigger. His brown eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. Logan, blood-streaked, tense. Claire, exhausted but steady. Two battered German shepherds at their sides. You look like hell, Cole said bluntly. Logan didn't waste time. We need to come in. Cole hesitated only a second, then stepped aside. Inside, the warmth hit immediately, sharp against frozen skin. Claire exhaled, her shoulders dropping slightly for the first time in hours. But there was no relief. Not yet. Logan moved straight to the counter, setting Claire's camera down in front of Cole. You need to see this. Cole frowned but didn't argue. He pulled the device closer, pressing play. The footage flickered across the small screen, the hatch, the crates, the markings, the blueprints. Then the audio. The voice. Kane's name. The deputy's expression shifted slowly as he watched. Skepticism faded. Concern took its place. Then something heavier. Jesus, Cole muttered under his breath. Claire stepped forward. It's not just here, she said. This is part of a bigger network. Land acquisitions, forced sales, staged accidents. I've been tracking it for months. Cole looked up at her. And you're just bringing this to me now? Claire held his gaze. I didn't have proof before. Logan cut in. Now we do. Cole nodded slowly, absorbing it. Then he reached for the phone on the desk. This isn't local anymore, he said. Not even close. He dialed, speaking in short, clipped sentences. Claire watched him, her pulse steadying slightly as the reality began to shift. This was moving beyond them now. It had to. Within an hour, the station changed. Vehicles arrived first, unmarked, dark, cutting through the snow with purpose. Then the people. Federal agents. Among them was a woman who stood out immediately. Tall, lean, her posture straight, movements precise. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, her sharp features framed by a calm, controlled expression. Her name was Special Agent Laura Mitchell, early 40s, known in federal circles for dismantling organized crime networks with surgical efficiency. She listened more than she spoke, her gray eyes missing nothing. When she finally addressed Logan and Claire, her voice was calm, measured. "Walk me through everything." They did, from the clearing, to the cabin, to the hatch, to the chase. Claire handed over the footage, the recorder, every piece of evidence they had. Mitchell reviewed it in silence, occasionally asking for clarification, her questions precise and targeted. When she finished, she nodded once. "This is solid," she said. "More than solid." Claire felt something shift in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but validation. "Can you take him down?" she asked. Mitchell met her gaze. "We already are." The arrest happened before sunrise. Victor Kane was taken from his private residence just outside Iron Ridge. No warning, no delay. Claire didn't see it firsthand, but she saw the aftermath. The news broke fast. Local first, then regional, then national. Kane's name spread across headlines, tied to words like corruption, illegal development, organized crime. The network unraveled quickly once the first thread was pulled. Shell companies exposed, financial records seized, associates brought in. It wasn't clean. It wasn't quiet. But it was happening. Claire sat at a small desk inside the station, laptop open, fingers moving faster than they had in days. Exhaustion still clung to her, but adrenaline carried her through. She wrote in layers. Facts first, then context. Then the story beneath the story. The fire, the land, the pattern. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. The truth was enough. Logan stood nearby, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He didn't read over her shoulder. He didn't interfere. But he stayed. Titan and Shadow lay at his feet, finally resting, their breathing steady, their bodies relaxed for the first time since the storm began. Deputy Cole passed by once, glancing at the screen. "That's going to blow up," he said. Claire didn't look up. It should. By midday, it did. Her article went live across multiple platforms, picked up by larger outlets within hours. The footage embedded, the audio clear. Kane's voice unmistakable. The response was immediate. Calls, messages, requests for interviews. Claire ignored most of them. This wasn't about attention. It was about exposure. Logan stepped outside briefly, the cold air cutting through the noise inside. The storm had passed. The sky was clear, pale blue stretching over a landscape still buried in white. He looked out toward the forest in the distance, his land. Still there, still his. For now. When he came back in, Claire had finished. She leaned back in her chair, eyes closed for a moment. "It's done," she said quietly. Logan nodded. "No," he said. "It started." Claire opened her eyes, looking at him. For the first time since they met, there was something different there. Not just determination, something steadier. "Then we finish it," she said. Logan gave a small nod. Outside, Iron Ridge moved again, slowly, cautiously, but forward. And for the first time, the truth wasn't buried under snow. It was out in the open, where it couldn't be ignored. Winter didn't end all at once in Iron Ridge. It loosened its grip slowly, like something reluctant to let go. The snow still covered most of the land, but patches of dark earth had begun to show through along the edges of the roads, and the air, though still cold, carried a different weight. Not as harsh, not as final. For Logan Hayes, that change was more than seasonal. It was something he hadn't felt in years. Control. His land was still his. The forest still stood. The ridge lines still cut across the horizon the same way they always had, untouched by development, untouched by greed. At least for now. Logan stood just outside his cabin, hands resting loosely at his sides, his broad frame relaxed in a way it hadn't been since before the storm. The structure itself had been repaired over the past week, temporary reinforcements replaced with stronger beams, broken sections sealed, windows reset. It wasn't perfect, but it held. It always had. Behind him, Titan and Shadow moved freely for the first time since their injuries. Titan's stride had returned to its full strength, his powerful body cutting easily through the remaining snow, while Shadow moved with his usual sharp energy, darting ahead and circling back, alert and responsive. Both dogs had fully recovered under careful attention. That attention came from Dr. Evelyn Carter, a local veterinarian in her early 50s. She was tall, slender, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a loose knot, and calm blue eyes that carried both patience and quiet authority. Evelyn had spent decades working in rural communities, treating everything from working dogs to livestock, and had developed a reputation for never rushing judgment. Years earlier, she had lost her own husband, a forest ranger, in a wildfire that had never been fully explained. That loss had shaped her in ways she rarely spoke about, but it had also made her fiercely protective of the land and those who depended on it. She had taken one look at Titan and Shadow when they arrived and said simply, "They'll make it. They just need time." She had been right. Logan watched as Titan paused near the tree line, lifting his head, scanning the distance. Not in warning this time, just awareness. Shadow trotted back toward Logan, tail low but relaxed, stopping beside him briefly before moving on again. "They're good dogs," Evelyn said from behind him. Logan turned slightly. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed loosely, her posture easy but observant. "They're more than that," Logan replied. Evelyn gave a small nod. "I figured." She stepped closer, glancing toward the forest. "You're lucky." Logan didn't answer right away. Luck wasn't a word he used often, but this time, maybe it applied. "Maybe," he said quietly. Evelyn studied him for a moment longer, then smiled faintly. "Just don't waste it." She left shortly after, her truck disappearing down the narrow road as the afternoon light stretched across the snow. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was settled. Inside the cabin, Claire Bennett sat at the small wooden table, her laptop open, fingers moving steadily across the keys. Her posture had changed over the past week, less tense, more grounded. The exhaustion that had once defined her movements had faded, replaced by something steadier. Purpose. She had chosen to stay. Not out of necessity, but decision. Iron Ridge wasn't just a story anymore. It was something she wanted to see through. Her articles had continued to gain traction, each one building on the last, documenting not just the fall of Victor Kane's network, but the impact it had left behind. Families who had nearly lost their land, businesses that had been pressured into selling, a system that had operated quietly for years, now exposed, piece by piece. She wrote about all of it, but she also wrote about something else. Recovery. Claire paused, glancing up from her screen as Logan stepped inside. Their eyes met briefly. There was no tension now, no uncertainty, just recognition. "You're back early," she said. Logan shrugged slightly. "Didn't feel like going far." Claire smiled faintly, returning to her work. "That's new." Logan didn't argue. He moved to the far side of the room, checking supplies out of habit more than need. The rhythm of the space had changed. It wasn't just his anymore, and he didn't seem to mind. "How's the story?" he asked after a moment. Claire leaned back slightly, stretching her shoulders. "Different," she said. Logan glanced at her. "Different how?" Claire thought about it for a second. "Less about what happened," she said. "More about what happens next." Logan nodded once. That made sense. Outside, the light shifted again, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the snow. Claire closed her laptop gently. "I spoke to Evan this morning," she said. Logan raised an eyebrow slightly. "Your friend?" Claire nodded. "He's coming out next week. Wants to help document the rest of this." Logan considered that. "You trust him?" Claire didn't hesitate. "Yes." Logan accepted that without question. Trust wasn't something he gave easily, but Claire had earned it. That extended further than words. The dogs moved inside as the temperature dropped again, settling near the doorway, close enough to react, far enough to rest. Titan lay down first, heavy and calm. Shadow followed, curling slightly but keeping his head up. Always aware. Claire stood, moving to the window. The view stretched out across the ridge, untouched and open. "It's quiet," she said softly. Logan stepped beside her. It always was. Claire shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "It just feels different now." Logan looked out at the same view. For the first time in a long while, he didn't see threats. He saw space. Possibility. Claire glanced at him briefly. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Logan didn't answer immediately. He took a breath, letting it out slowly. "Stay," he said finally. Claire smiled faintly. "I figured." She turned back to the window. "Good." Another quiet moment passed. Not awkward, not forced, just there. The kind that didn't need to be filled. Logan shifted slightly, his shoulder brushing hers, just enough to register, not enough to define. Neither of them pulled away. Outside, Titan lifted his head again, watching the horizon as the last light faded. Shadow followed his gaze, calm, steady. The storm was gone. The threat had passed. And what remained wasn't just survival. It was something new. Not rushed, not fragile, but real. A beginning. Have you ever wondered, what would you have done in their place? Would you have walked away, or risked everything to stand for what's right? Sometimes, life doesn't test us with comfort. It tests us with moments that demand courage. And maybe, just maybe, those moments aren't accidents. Maybe they are placed in our path by God to reveal who we truly are when it matters most. Logan stood his ground. Claire chose the truth. And in the middle of the storm, when everything could have been lost, they found something greater than fear. Faith, purpose, and each other. So now I want to ask you, Do you believe everything happens for a reason? Or do we create meaning through the choices we make? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories like this. Your support means everything, and the next story might be the one that stays with you forever.